shoot. Hey, I'm running late. I gotta be somewhere, so I'm gonna take this with me and I'm gonna tell you about it when we get there. All right? Okay. It's a Streamdeck with knobs. Okay? Except Elgato added some sneaky stuff in. I'll tell you about it when we get there. Hey, I wanted to see if you noticed something in this video. I've been wanting a little bit of a revamp with some of our video graphics. These ones you're looking at right here. So I used the sponsor of today's video, Upwork, to get them done. Look, if you own a small business or you're starting or even just want to start a small business, including content creation, YouTubing, this kind of stuff, sometimes you need the help of a freelancer to get stuff done because you don't have the funds to hire an entire staff yet. Upwork is a great place to get all those things done and done fast. Connect with logo designers, app developers, marketing agencies. Just search what you need and get started. You can also post a job and let talent come to you if you want. Upwork lets you see work history, client reviews, portfolios, the rates, and then once you find someone that works, Upwork then gives you all the tools you need like chat rooms, video calls, and file shares to get everything done. So stop waiting to get that idea done. Click the link in the description, which by the way helps the channel, so thank you for doing that, and get started with Upwork today. Now back to the video. I hope I didn't downplay this device too much because I genuinely think this is gonna be probably the most popular Elgato device they've ever put out. If people understand it. Let me explain. While yes, this is a Streamdeck with 4 knobs on it. Oh, and by the way, also a touch screen right here. I didn't mention that earlier. It's the classic Elgato fashion of looking beyond the obvious functions and saying, if we were to add a couple tiny little software features, how could we completely expand the options that this can do? And there are 3 things that this can do that I think are borderline game changing. At least for some people. They are for me, for sure. This is absolutely gonna be, like, I might have to replace almost all of my Streamdecks with this one. This will absolutely be a staple in my studio, especially in my editing room. Let's start with the obvious stuff. So it's a Streamdeck. It's got 8 buttons, 4 soft buttons on the touch screen, which can also be swiped to go back and forth between different pages, meaning you don't have to sacrifice a button as an arrow button to the next page. You can just swipe now, which honestly, I've never used the pages kind of for that reason. So anyway, nice little feature there. And then 4 knobs, which can also be clicked. Literally the top line on the outline I wrote for this video is, it's about time. Because back in 2020, they released the Elgato Wave, and since then you've had to control all of its massive functionality with buttons, which is insane. It's been almost 3 years and we're controlling our microphones with buttons. But that's the obvious thing. Let's move past it to the fun stuff, okay? Thing number, we're gonna pretend that didn't happen. Thing number 1, you know how wavelink, the software that comes with our microphones and their Wave XLR stuff, is a solid, robust, simple, easy to use, versatile audio setup, but literally you can't use it unless you have a Wave thing plugged in. This accomplishes the same goal. I don't know why I'm showing you the back. This does the same thing. If you plug this into a computer running wavelink, wavelink activates. You don't need a Wave XLR or a Wave 1 or a Wave 3 plugged in. You can now use the audio mixing software just to mix stuff. I don't know if have you ever had one of those devices plugged in and muted and sitting behind your computer because you just wanted to use mixing software? I have. On my Mac. When I do Zoom calls in my editing room on my MacBook Pro, I plug in a Wave XLR and set it behind my speaker just so I can control all the inputs separately. This now does that handoff, meaning if you have a simple interface, something without mixing software, an XLR microphone that you like, an XLR setup like the Focusrite Scarlett, whatever, you now have software that you can completely control that with, and you don't need to plug in a microphone. Another other microphone or interface for. You can just plug this in, and not only does it activate wavelink software, but you can control it with this now. Finally, I wanted to get that one out of the way first because it was short and simple, but very exciting to a certain group of people. If that's not you, then well, let's move on to number 2. I'm curious how many of you watched Linus Tech Tips and saw their recent video where they talked about all the different Mac OS complaints, and one of the big ones being there is still no application audio control. You can't turn down Chrome or Discord or whatever separately. There's only one volume bar for the entire operating system. I love that everything Elgato does is Windows and Mac compatible. Because of course I game and I stream on a PC, but my daily driver is a MacBook Pro. In fact, a massive number of video editors use Macs, and a lot of them have used Streamdecks because you can set all those hotkeys. Well, now you can do knobs with it too on your Mac. The fact that Elgato added multi-channel audio supports to Mac is an impressive engineering feat on its own that I don't think a lot of people really understand. There's a reason that the Go XLR and the Beacon stuff just aren't compatible with Mac, because it's just not easy to make. So I love that I can use this setup at both my gaming streaming setup and my editing setup. Fantastic one. But here, I knocked the camera a little bit. Here's where we get into the big one. I saved number 3 for last. When it comes to hardware peripherals, there are 2 different classes of devices, right? There's the general stuff, and then there is the specialized stuff. Let me give you an example. A general thing is a keyboard, right? You can use the keyboard in any app, you can use it in the open operating system, you can use it in gaming. Anything that you use your computer for, you use your keyboard for. And then there is specialized stuff. And a good example of that is a color correction control panel for video editing. There are control panels designed to color correct videos, and they are made specifically for that one thing in mind. They're insanely expensive, which is probably due to the fact that they have to be very specifically engineered to be perfectly precise for that exact niche, but then also the audience is so small that in order to make a profit off of it, you don't have a lot of scale. You have to have higher profit margins in order to actually have a functioning business in those kind of things, right? I would be curious if any of you had a device like that. And then there's also consumer level devices like this. For example, the Beacon system, which I love and I use at my stream setup, but it controls the audio and that's all it does. Elgato added some functionality into this where you can set these as hotkeys, but not just one hotkey. You can set turning to the left as one hotkey, turning to the right as a hotkey, and then clicking in as a third hotkey for every single knob. The very first thing I did with this device when I got it, after testing it with the wavelink software, of course, was I opened up Final Cut Pro, which is the editing software that we use, and I mapped this knob to trim left and trim right. Because one of the frustrating parts of edits is when you're getting into the fine tune and you're trying to trim frames, 1 or 2 frames off the left or right side of a cut in order to make it perfect. Whether that's because you have snapping on so it doesn't want to do any less than 3 frames, so you got to zoom in or have to turn off snapping, or it's just hard to click in and drag it perfectly with a mouse, I can click on that edit and I'll go 1 click at a time with this. Or another example, Sam Woodhall, you guys know Sam, he used to be the editor of this channel, was showing me on a call the other day how he mapped all of his to be his fine-tune color correction. Similar to that DaVinci Resolve thing, but on a Stream Deck. He mapped buttons to switch between the different pucks, to switch between exposure and color and saturation, have one knob move the color pucks left and right across the spectrum, another knob move them up and down in terms of intensity, positive and negative. And sure, that's not gonna be better than the $2,000 plus specifically tailored device for color correction in a specific app, DaVinci Resolve, but it is way better than nothing, which is what we had before. And those are just 2 examples. Like as I go through these new softwares and I see things like keyframe adjustments or spline editing and seeing like what hotkeys would be really cool to map to a knob, I wanna see how much I can streamline any of these processes. And more than that, here's a question, can I adjust hotkeys so I can make maybe one of my foot pedals with the Elgato foot pedal, can I make that a shift button? So then I have, you know, left, right, click, but then as I hold shift with my foot, left, right, click, I have 8 knobs basically. Hey, so I actually just tested this, just got home, and yes, you can do that. You can set a modifying button like Shift or Control to another Streamdeck button or even to a Streamdeck foot pedal and use that to modify all your tools. So keep that in mind. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is they have something called dial stacks that I didn't explain in this video. Essentially, you can set the knob to be a hotkey. So left, right, and then tap on the touch screen for the middle click. But then if you click the knob itself, so you can essentially stack as many sets of hotkeys as you want and then rotate through them by clicking the button. This is actually really great to do with the Wavelink software so that you can shift between your mix and the audience mix by setting those two things as different functions in the knob and then rotate between them just by hitting the button. Anyway, back to the video. Or even more, because I can hit multiple, like maybe I can have Shift, Control, and Option at my foot switches, and I can make these, 16 knobs or whatever. The point I'm trying to make is while this thing will absolutely never replace Blackmagic's insane color board panel, I love when companies add just that little extra functionality. The ability to hotkey the knobs is one of those things where it's like 1 + 1 = 11 because the doors just exploded open. And I'm excited to see what people do with it. And this is why I think this is gonna be the most popular Streamdeck and potentially even the most popular Elgato device. I see this being used across all types of workstations. I mean, obviously the major downside is that there's only 8 buttons versus what does the big one have again? What is it, is it 24? I feel like it's 32. 32 buttons? Yeah, 4x8. 32 buttons. Yeah, down to only 8 buttons. I don't know if I'm gonna get rid of my XL on my main streaming setup, but which now makes me think, what if I go through the OBS hotkey settings that I haven't fully explored? What can I turn these into 3 different hotkeys for? And if the shift thing works and I can set this to be one scene, this to be one scene, this to be one scene, hold down a foot switch, this to be 3 more, I don't even have that many scenes. I mean, this could technically be more buttons than the XL. I gotta explore this thing so much more. I'm so excited. Oh, and then one more thing. I guess they're releasing colored knobs. I'm gonna try to convince them to send me red. Wish me luck. Hit the like button. Leave a comment down below on what you think. And as always, happy streaming.